Hi, and welcome back to Beebe Book Buzz. We are back. It's September. We've been gone for the summer, and we're very excited to have a very special guest with us today. Leanne Ellis is back, the one who started it all. And we also have Jackie with us again, as always, almost always. And I'm Karen Stern, and we're here to tell you about some great books we've been reading over the summer, and hope that you'll find your next great read. I'm going to start today with a book that came out, was in the summer, wasn't it? Early summer. It's called I Cheerfully Refuse by Leif Enger. And I'm going to kind of start it. This is going to be a big, giant teaser, really, because I don't want to give too much away about this book. It's something, I will say, it's for those of you who are looking for a little bit of a sense of hope in dark times. And I want to start by talking about the cover and the title, oddly. I don't usually do that. But if you take a look at the cover art, which we will be showing you on the screen, it's beautiful. It's very evocative of what happens in the book. So what we've got here, first of all, you can see is Lake Superior. So that is it is all set on Lake Superior, and it's islands, and you can see the colors are kind of these greens and blues, and it's sort of darkly mysterious, beautiful, wild. So that gives us a little bit of the setting and the tone of the book. The sailboat here is this little perky little red sailboat all by itself in the middle of that great vast wild. And it's kind of it's very happy looking sailboat all by itself. And it kind of gives you a sense of the smallness of the human players on this big, vast, in this setting. And then, of course, you've got some of the dangers represented by the fire and not only just the fire, but just the sort of vastness of it all. So it's an evocative cover, and then you get to the title, and the title, I Cheerfully Refuse, has that contradiction in it, which I think gives you a lot of clues about like what's going on in the book. There's a tension in the book. Though. It's a little cheeky, and that's right. There's a sense of on the one hand that dark, mysterious landscape, and there's also we're in a near future setting here. Take our society, crumble it a little further, and you've got what we're talking about here. So you've got that balanced with a feeling in this book, which is a little cheeky, is a little happy, is a little hopeful, mysterious as well. There's a lot of beauty, mystery, and hope that kind of pulls you through this book and is the balance to that bleakness that you see on the front cover and a bit in the refusal of the title. Okay, so for those of you who want details, there are some, and I'm not going to give too much away, but Rainy is our main character, and that Rainy is short for Rainier, and Rainier as in Mount Rainier, and Rainy is a big guy. He's like a 30-something kind of handyman, musician, very much part of his character. He is, I think, kind of hipster-y-ish, right? That guy. He lives with his, the love of his life, Lark, who is a local bookstore owner. And now this is in a time when books are highly suspect, if not thought even dangerous. Like a lot of people don't read anymore in this. That's where we've gotten.
How far are we?
We're not that far.
Okay.
According to the author, we're maybe, I don't know, 50, 75?
Generously 50 years.
Generously 50, you think?
Yeah.
Leanne has read this book too, so we have a lot to say. So Lark comes home with a house guest one night, actually a boarder, who is an interesting character in himself. His name is Kellen, and he has escaped. They're pretty sure he's escaped from. There are ships full of indentured servants in this world where the 1%, what you would call the 1%ers now have, I don't know, they're an even smaller percent, and the gap has gotten even bigger between the haves and the have-nots. So he is probably, they think, escaped from one of these ships where the indentured servants are working. And he's got something with him that Lark has been looking for most of her life. this book, which is called I Cheerfully Refuse. So we've got a story within a story. And the rumor about this book and the story called I Cheerfully Refuse is that the author wrote it as a kind of panacea against the dark times that were coming in the world of this book. So she is doing what our author is also doing. Anger wrote this in COVID. He felt compelled to write it because it felt so bleak to him that he needed something to pull him through. And he went to his desk every day and sat and wrote this book. Clearly fell in love with his characters, and as you will, and gave us this story of the mystery and the beauty of life that pulls you through the dark times. And that's what this book is about. So there is great tragedy in this book. I would say on the scale of the classics, like the Odyssey, Rainey is a traveler on the seas, except it's a big lake, but it's kind of like a sea. He's pursued by people who would do him harm. He takes refuge in various communities across the lake.
Are there like lake pirates?
Yes, there are lake pirates, and there are ships with ships where these indentured servants work. He becomes one of those at one point. He takes on a stowaway, a young girl who becomes kind of a daughter figure to him. And there's echoes all over here in literature. I mean, there's kind of Gulliver's Travels, right? The moving from place to place. Each one of these communities that he goes through has a different way of dealing with the dark times, right? Some of them are very joyful places to be, and other places are kind of evil and horrible and scary. There's also a sort of element of Don Quixote in this, like just doing your best, tilting at windmills. And then I would say that when this daughter figure kind of comes in, Saul, it reminds me a little bit of Cormac McCarthy's The Road, that kind of, but not as bleak. I will say that, not as bleak. So there's disasters, there's violence, the indentured servitude I mentioned before. There's also joy. But somehow through it all, Rainey kind of manages to do more than just survive. He comes through. And what I liked about the way Anger portrays Rainey is that he's not either some sort of silly Don Quixote. He's not stupidly adventurous, but he's also not some superhero who makes it through with brawn. And he's just a guy who's dealing with the crappy stuff that life deals you, sometimes really, in his case, crappy
and sometimes
stuff.
It's a matter of his reaching really deep to get the fortitude and the resilience he needs to take that next step, which is part of the humanity that this book so well describes.
And he moves through, and he's always looking ahead, and there is always some sense of possibility, some sense of hope, some sense of the beauty and the mystery of life, as I said before. So I haven't told you what the central tragedy of this book is, or the resulting, I haven't given you a whole lot of details about the adventures, but I think that's why you want to read this book. It's definitely an adventure story. It's a tale of the high seas in certain ways. It will definitely keep you turning pages. It has an amazing cast of secondary characters. I mean, he does secondary characters so well. Like, you meet all these people, and they all have their own arc. Like, you meet them, and you see where they go, and you know them. And he's very good at this, and his language contributes to that. Language is also really beautiful. I mean, he describes Kellen at one point as, he says Kellen ate like he was falling forward. And I just loved, like these little things like that. You just can imagine this guy just inhaling his food, and just because he was starving. And he just has a way with language. He describes the lake as a sentient lake. And he says, and the weather and the lake is huge in the book. It's playing through the whole thing like a movie. You can imagine it. He calls the lake a blackboard to the end of sight, and any story could be written on it, which is exactly what he's doing in this book. He's writing the story of Rainey and Lake Superior and all of those amazing characters, and the love of his life, Lark. So I would highly, highly recommend this book. Truly has the power to take you away, I think.
Yes. I also think it's one of the chewiest books I've read in a really long time. And I think about it a lot. I probably finished it in the beginning of the summer because the characters are so indelible. They just stick with you.
They do.
What they think about, how they work around through their problems, all of those things. So one of the things I've been telling people when I talk about this book is that it's not an easy book to read because of the things the people have to go through, but you have this lingering, that wonderful, the best parts of humanity rise to the top here. And even when it looks hopeless, you see that glimmer. And towards the end, when you really see it all come together, it really gave me some hope in the spring when I didn't have much about a lot of things nationally. And I kept thinking, this is the right book for this year.
Yeah.
It really is. And I think it would make a stunning discussion.
Absolutely. I agree.
I'm hearing, and I have not read this because I've never wanted to, but is it not as bleak as like Handmaid's Tale?
Oh, no.
Okay, because it's like I'm thinking the way that book was written, it's the future, but like you can kind of see it. Like it's not so distant.
Yes, in terms of
it's a believable trajectory. In some ways.
The setting is so believable. I think that's another reason that it's so powerful is that you totally believe that we could be in this place in every way. You believe that not very long from now, if things went badly, you could be in this place. Yeah. So that helps you to both. It helps you to feel all of it more, that it's so relatable.
And the bibliographic kind of details in this book also create that tension for saying that it's something people don't believe you should do anymore is reading, that books are not the precious commodities that other people think they are.
Yeah.
Like, and Lark is trying to collect.
That's what I love about Lark's character so much. She has all the joy that any reader has around books and more. I mean, she just gets it. She's very wise.
And she sees each book as a journey.
Yeah.
And that's the part that's missing from some other people's.
She's so excited about I Cheerfully Refuse that she's almost afraid to read it because she's afraid it's going to disappoint her after all these years of waiting. And it's like, But the reading of the book does play a part in moving the story along as well.
There's another part that you didn't mention that I'm not going to go into the details either, but there's a religious theme that runs through this as well. And it made me think about the hope and the despair that takes place in Marilyn Robinson's books, because she does a lot of, and her word choices, they have that too. She's beautiful language, her choice of language and her style. But also because I think part of what she does that Anger does well is she sees both the pros and the cons to faith and religion.
Right.
And uses it in her ability to show you in the book rather than tell you.
Right.
There's no preaching in either of those, her books or in this book. And if you think that dystopia isn't something you want to read about, because this is
it's
dystopian adjacent, right?
Speculative / dystopian.
I think it's one of the easier ones to wrap your head around.
Yeah, definitely. And also, if you like, I said this before a little bit, but I mean, it is all about sailing. If anybody's a sailor here, it's fantastic in the detail that he obviously knows his way around a sailboat, and it reminds me a little bit of Peter Heller's books from that point of view, in terms of the adventure side of it, the good writing, the characters. There's not as much to chew on maybe in a Peter Heller book, but there are definite parallels there.
Well, he has his moments, and also the water.
Yes. Oh my God, the water. As you can imagine, it's everywhere. There are storms, and there are, it's just like you're out at sea and you're being tossed in your turn, and you might go overboard, and it's very dramatic in that way. Yeah. So it's a good from the adventure point of view. So, I Cheerfully Refuse by Layfinger, and we will move on to Jackie, who has a lighter.
I think you just invite me for levity, because I just don't often. I do read some heavier books, but
that's okay. Light is important.
I like light. So this is Very Bad Company by Emma Rosenblum, and I did talk her first book, which was Bad Summer People, I think at the same time last year, because I think I read it in the summer.
I do remember that one.
This is very similar in tone, in pace. It's snarky and soapy and decadent, and it's just rich people behaving badly. Except this time, last time they were all on Fire Island, and they were summering. And this group is on, they're a bunch of executives from this wildly successful tech startup, fictional obviously, Aurora. They're an ad tech startup. And they every year do this. They've only been around for a few years, but every year their executives do this retreat in Miami. And there's only like 6, 7, or 8 people, but it's very bougie. And so this is their annual retreat, and the book opens with the CEO, and it's his perspective, but it's third person, and he's about to identify a body, and that's the prologue. And he's kind of reflecting on how he kind of got to this point of identifying this body, and you don't know who the body is, you don't know what happens. So then you get to the first chapter, and you're actually rewinding a few days, and you meet Caitlin Levy, and she's just been hired by Aurora, and she is going to be their new, she's been hired to do events, basically. The company doesn't do events, so she doesn't really know what the job is, and so you're kind of like, well, why did she take this job? Well, because they're going to pay her $3 million. So she's like, great, I'll figure it out. So
$3 million.
$3 million.
$3 million.
Yeah, the salaries and the wealth that they just sort of bandy about is very startling. And I actually have a friend who is high up in the corporate world, and I was like, is this accurate? And she was like, I was like, oh, okay. So she's got this job, and so her entree into this company is the retreat. So she has not met anyone. Right. Except the CEO, she gets off the plane, and like now she's at this retreat with all these people who have known each other for a while. So these are all these C-suite executives. They have all these well-established relationships. Some of them are kind of sibling-like. Some of them are sexual. Everybody's angling for more money. Everybody has secrets. They all think that the CEO is a weirdo. Seems to really be a weirdo, but they're kind of oddly loyal to him, and no one can quite articulate why. They just sort of, it's kind of this weird dynamic that I think his personality sort of draws people in, and he's one of those people that's kind of like oddly magnetic, like seems like kind of a nerd, but so the body, the identity of the body is actually revealed earlier than you would think. I think in her first book, you don't find out who the body is until like 20 pages before the end. So this one, you find out who it is a little bit earlier. But the murder and the motive and all of this it takes a long time. Like it slowly unravels. With all of that unraveling, all these secrets of the company start coming out. And this is like not a tightly run ship. Everyone is like, there's secret pregnancies and like affairs, and everyone has this sort of they're very chummy and casual with each other, but then they're all just like talking behind their backs. They're all very emotionally immature. They're extremely successful. All the people involved are very high performing, very competent, very good at their jobs, and just like a mess in their private lives. So because the perspective changes, and it's not you don't hear every single character's perspective, but you probably hear like 6 maybe. Yep. You hear all of their insecurities, and so but then you see how the other people see them, and it's really great. It's not, I would say, as well constructed as her first book. Her first book was so tight, like every single piece by the end sort of fell into line, and all these parts, came together, and you were like, oh my God, all these people are so screwed up. This one is like not quite as tidy in that way. It's I don't know, a little. The ending to me felt like slightly anticlimactic, but this one is much funnier. The other one was like this one is almost like very Desperate Housewives, like it's a dated reference, but like it's dark, but it's ridiculous. The other one was too, but not quite as funny as this one. I think because in the other one you were talking about families, and so there were often like children involved that were like marriages getting broken up. Like this is just adults on vacation doing insane, stupid things. The CEO is obsessed with Winston Churchill, and it's just this running joke through that. Like he shows up in a Winston Churchill outfit at a dinner, and like it's worth the price of admission. But she's really good at showing kind of that very subtle corruption that wealth brings, and sort of showing you how these people are justifying it to themselves, like why they want more and why it's never enough. Because you're sitting here going, well, $3 million, like what else? What could you could work for a year and be fine, right? No, but like that's not how they think. So it's definitely a character. Like if you read for character, you will enjoy it. It is very. I mean, it's also plot driven, but the characters are really worth.
It sounds like if you need a belly laugh, you could get that too.
Yes, yes. They're all just, you're rolling your eyes, and they're ridiculous people. But
sounds like it's a quick read too.
It's a quick read.
Page turner.
Page turner. Yep, absolutely. So this is Emma Rosenblum. Very bad company.
Would you say that Kevin Kwan is a vicinity?
Kevin Kwan does have there's a seriousness to that is not even present here. Like there's always a character in his books that are like real and not ridiculous. Like everybody around them is.
Right.
But the central character are often like really struggling against either their like cultural expectations or their family expectations. Like there's not even any of that here.
Yeah.
It's just a bunch of silly rich people.
Right.
Yeah. Fighting over stock options.
Well, it sounds like it's entertaining, if not as layered. So.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. You guys have covered the layers today, I think. So.
Well, I mean, there's some entertainment to be had.
Well, that's
in
true.
Leanne's
I was going
to
say the book I'm doing is called The Husbands by Holly Gramazio, I think it is. But I think this was a novel which I thought made this even more exceptional, because I just think coming out of the gate, a first novelist to attempt something like she does and pull it off, you deserve a lot of kudos. It's a sort of a mixed up time travel relationship novel. I'm going to call it that for lack of anything else.
It's a hard one to categorize.
It is. It really
I read it this summer too, and it's great, but it's hard to say what it is.
And it's an intriguing concept, and it asks the reader to take a few leaps. So if you don't mind doing that, then you probably will be fine. But you have to take a few leaps of faith. And our main character, Lauren, discovers that she inhabits a magic world. And the cover art provides a hint of how this happens, where she is supplied husbands, much like a revolving door. I found this intriguing for so many reasons. Being an old married lady of 35 years, I was like, why would you want to keep going through different husbands? But she doesn't have a choice. Just happens to her. Her life continues in a linear fashion, however, but each husband brings different circumstances that affect her employment, her other relationships, and her London flat, which is mostly co-owned with her sister Nat in each of these visitations. With the passage of time, we get to know Lauren's preferences, her yearnings, and baggage. She has a lot of baggage, and we get to see passing glimpses of most of the husbands, and there are a lot of them, but a few deep dives into a few of them as well. Those are more obviously developed than others, and she's a very well-developed character. You feel both her ability to get very frustrated by the situation, but also sort of look at it as maybe this is a gift that she should be paying attention to. It was very entertaining, and it was really quite a diversion. It's laced with sometimes slapstick humor, but mostly it's acerically witty and has a lot of irony. The setting of her various apartments, because it's each iteration of husband brings on a different version of the apartment and her life, and the London environment, and one sojourn in the United States, have good detail, as does her gardening, fashion, food, and musical references, and they help to make different iterations of her relationships with neighbors, friends, relatives, and there's a big cast of characters, and some of the husbands more memorable. I particularly enjoyed these two plants that keep coming back. They sort of become these touchstones of her well-being.
Right.
And I thought that was very clever, the way she weaves that through it. Now, she plays with not only, obviously, there's some time jumping, she's also playing with style. Halfway through the book, her the author adds a nice twist to make the story even more interesting, and also shifts to the third-person point of view from first-person point of view. In the last chapter, that adds a welcome dimension to the storyline. She also uses modern technology really well to further the story and to give you information you wouldn't get otherwise. It makes perfect sense that certain things happen because of it. Lauren discovers early on that each husband also resets her economic circumstances, which gives the plot mechanics more sense.
Yep.
If she didn't take care of that right away, you would be questioning how this could possibly happen. I mean, you're questioning that anyway, but even more so because that would be a glitch in the plot.
Right.
Right. So, the thematic material revolves around how sometimes we don't find the perfect in our choices, and really, in reality, demands that we make the best of the best choices and live in the moment rather than looking over our shoulders or around the next corner for something better. It isn't about settling. And it was an interesting way how, by the end of the book, you really understand this. It's not about settling. It's about accepting reality and its boundaries. And there is a difference.
Yeah.
And appreciating the good things and good people in our lives. I was personally disappointed that we never really discover why this husband replacement happens. But I don't think you need to really understand the mechanics of it. If you do, this may not be the book for you. However, I think that no matter how the time-bending mechanism works, it really isn't needed to enjoy this as an innovative story and one woman's entrancing journey in this sort of relationship romance novel that's touched with magical realism. In fact, I think not discussing why this happens presents a really interesting discussion question if you were to do this as a discussion group. And I would also say this would be a great discussion group. You would laugh a lot, but you'd also have a lot to say. Also, I think because there's a cross-generational thing going on here that would add dimension to a discussion. Because the way I look at having many husbands at the wise old age that I am, and perhaps a newlywed, would look at this very differently.
Right.
With the stars in their eyes.
Right.
Not that the stars aren't still in my eyes.
Well, yeah. I mean, do you want to get to choose? Do you want to get to choose between all these possible husbands, or would that just be a really wearing experience?
And does it take away the romance part of it that really drives some of the fuel of what we want from our lives?
Yeah.
So it's very interesting.
Is she choosing? Is it,
no,
or is it like
she doesn't get to choose?
No, but I mean, so you'd get to the end, and is it just like she ends up with the one that she has last? Does that sort of?
Well, she has to make a decision.
Okay.
She has to make a decision, and
so she does eventually get. She doesn't make the choices individually, but at the end.
At the end, she has to make a decision to kind of end the whole scenario, or not.
Or not.
That is her. That is her.
And
choice.
that's the decision. Otherwise, it could keep continuing.
It would continue forever.
And some people come back. I mean, the comical revolving door part of it are really, and what she has to do in some cases to sort of get rid of the person.
Oh, it's a great comedy. I mean, it really would. It would actually make a hilarious rom-com. I mean, very, very. It would play really well on the stage.
Yes.
On the screen. Sorry. Yeah. So.
No, I agree, 100%. And I was trying to, and read-alikes are different. The closest title probably that I've ever read that's sort of like this is Una Out of Order.
Yeah.
Which is Margarita Montemore's book, which I thought was fabulous.
Yep.
And, but I also think people who like Matt Haig, who especially like the Midnight Library with all the things he does with time.
Yeah. Because it's not, if you like Matt Haig, it's not more than that. Like it might sound really kind of almost sci-fi-ish the way you talk about it. You know, she keeps switching husbands, but it is kind of in the same way that the Matt Haig character in How to Stop Time.
Yes.
How to Stop Time.
Yes.
You know, it's not dissimilar from that.
No, not at all. And I also think Melissa Barron's Twice in a Lifetime has some similarities, and also the Time Traveler's Wife, although that's certainly far more literary and far more layered, but still.
And also only involves the two.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think people who have problems with time jumping or time changing like this, or the revolving door, if they could look at it as little vignettes that you have when you're dating.
Yeah.
Rather than...
It made me think of, and I think it's totally different, but Life After Life. With Kate Atkinson, like the...
Yeah. Totally different.
But a totally different...
Yeah. It's much more rom-com-y than
I mean, that's not even remotely funny. But,
no.
But that idea that these are all the possibilities for your life, like one thing.
Right. Yeah.
One small thing.
It's playing with the same idea
changes the your trajectory.
And each iteration, she has to, from the very first time to the 15th or the 20th or whatever, and there's a lot of them, she has to learn, and you learn with her what she has to do to get through it, or does she have a choice in saying nay? How do I do that then? And then, but I, what I have more something better than what I'm going to get.
Right, and then the humor comes from that when she's like, she can take a look at him and go, definitely not, and she's got to get him back in the attic so that she gets the next one. Those are always fun.
Those were fun. Those were fun.
Is that the attic is the
cover picture shows a ladder going into the attic, and if you can get the guy to go into the attic, you get a new one.
Oh, that's so how just it happens. Send them up for the Christmas decorations.
Exactly. Well, but sometimes they don't want to go, and then all kinds of things happen. It's good. There's a lot of humor.
And it's very inventive at what she does. I think as a first novel, I think that Gramazio does a really good job. It was a lot of fun. And it was one of those books that I really wanted to talk about, so thank you. Because it was like, nobody else has read this that I know of.
No, I wish, it's a good one to talk about. I'm glad. I definitely recommend it too. And I think we're probably out of time, so I'm going to say goodbye and thank you for joining us today on Beebe Book Buzz, and we'll be back next month with some more for you. Take care.